It started out like any other Tuesday morning, calm, quiet, almost boring. But by the time the sun set, that ordinary day had turned into absolute chaos. My routine coffee, my inbox, my car, and nearly my sanity, all tangled up in one of the most ridiculous confrontations I've ever faced. Have you ever had someone act like the world owes them whatever they want? Like they can just take what's yours because it's convenient for them? That's exactly what happened to me. I had no idea a simple text message would lead to cops at my doorstep and a showdown that left everyone speechless. There I was, sipping my coffee, scrolling through morning emails, when her name popped up, Karen, you know the type, entitled, demanding, and convinced that the rules of common sense don't apply to her. Her message started innocently enough. "Hey, could I borrow your car for my son's driving test today?" I froze mid-sip. My car? For her son's test? The same woman who once borrowed a blender and returned it cracked 3 weeks later? Yeah, that one. Lending a car isn't like lending sugar. It's a whole different level of trust. I hesitated, but she didn't give me time to think. "It's just for an hour," she insisted. "He really needs this." Her tone carried that guilt-trip sweetness people use when they think manipulation counts as persuasion. I could feel it. She expected me to cave. Something about it didn't sit right. It wasn't just the request. It was the entitlement behind it. Like I somehow owed her. So I stayed polite and said no, figuring that was the end of it. But if you've ever dealt with a true Karen, you know the word no just flips a switch. Seconds later, another message popped up. "If you don't let me use your car, I'm calling the police." I actually laughed at first. She couldn't be serious. The police? Over a car loan? But then the phone rang. Her sharp voice sliced through the line like static. "You're refusing to help, and that's unacceptable," she snapped. "You're breaking some kind of civic duty or something." I almost choked on my coffee. "Civic duty? To lend my car?" I calmly reminded her that no law requires anyone to hand over their vehicle, but she wasn't having it. She started threatening to make my life difficult. That's when my patience hit its limit. Not from fear, oh no, but from the sheer audacity. Here's the part she didn't know. I wasn't just some random neighbor she could push around. I had something she couldn't possibly predict, an ally who knew the law inside and out. Let's just say I had the state attorney's number on speed dial. So instead of arguing, I let her dig her own hole. Sure enough, she called the police, expecting them to scold me or force me to be a good neighbor. She didn't realize. She had just turned a petty tantrum into a full-blown legal disaster for herself, and that's when things got wild. Sirens, flashing lights, the hum of engines outside my driveway. I remember taking a calm sip of coffee as I looked out the window and thought, she really did it. The officers stepped out, badges gleaming in the morning sun. Karen stood behind them with her arms crossed, looking smug, like she'd already won. I opened the door slowly, a polite smile hiding my inner amusement. "Morning, officers," I said cheerfully. "How can I help you today?" They looked surprised, maybe expecting hostility, but I kept my tone even and calm. I explained everything, her messages, the threats, and the fact that no law requires me to hand over my private property. As I spoke, I could see their expressions shift, from tense to understanding. Karen, standing a few feet away, couldn't contain herself. "This is ridiculous," she barked. "She has to let me use her car. My son's test is today." Her voice cracked halfway through that sentence. The desperation was showing now. She glared at me like I was the villain in her story, but I could see it. The panic setting in as the officers started to realize what was actually happening. One of them gently pulled her aside to explain the legal stance. I watched her face change, confusion melting into disbelief, disbelief collapsing into panic, and that's when it clicked for her. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't even in control anymore. She had just made a huge mistake, and I hadn't even lifted a finger. She thought she could command the world with her voice, that authority would bend to her will, the way neighbors usually did. But reality doesn't work that way, and that's when I made my quiet move. Calmly, strategically, almost as an afterthought, I mentioned, "Oh, by the way, the state attorney's reviewing this matter. That single sentence changed everything. Karen froze. Her confident expression cracked into one of pure panic, that unmistakable oh no look people get when they realize they've picked a fight with the wrong person. The officers exchanged looks, almost as if to say, well, you called us here. Now deal with it. The air grew heavy. You could feel the tension pulsing between us. Karen tried to negotiate, to argue, to twist the narrative back in her favor, but every attempt shattered against the wall of cold, hard facts. I was the legal owner of my vehicle. No law forced me to lend it. And yes, the state attorney was aware of everything. Her threats grew weaker, more desperate, almost comical by the end. When she finally stormed off, her face was red with frustration, her confidence gone. She drove away furious but powerless. As the officers left, I closed the door, leaned back, and exhaled. What had started as a petty favor request had turned into something much bigger. A test of boundaries, authority, and self-control. But little did I know, that wasn't the end. Not even close. Because people like Karen, they don't lose quietly. A few hours later, my phone buzzed again. More messages, each one nastier than the last. The tone was changing from entitled to unhinged. You think calling the police stops me? My son still needs that car. This isn't over. At that point, I knew this wasn't about the car anymore. It was about control, about proving that her persistence could overpower reason and reality. By mid-afternoon, she had taken her tantrum online. Subtle posts, carefully worded, painting herself as the victim of some imagined feud. The poor mother denied help by a heartless neighbor. No names, of course, but the insinuation was obvious. I ignored it. But deep down, I knew what was coming. People like her never stop at words. They manipulate, escalate, and weaponize systems meant to protect others. Then came the call that confirmed it. A local news reporter wanted a comment. Apparently, a neighbor had shared the story. My eyebrows shot up. Karen had actually tried to spin this into a community drama. But panic? Not a chance. Years of dealing with pressure had taught me that composure was my strongest weapon. I politely declined the interview and stayed silent. I wasn't giving her narrative any oxygen. That evening, my phone rang again, this time from the state attorney's office. I'd been keeping them updated, but now they were stepping in. Their message was simple and reassuring. You're in the clear. Legally and ethically. Let her keep pushing. Every message, every call, every public post becomes evidence. In short, her obsession was building her own case against herself. And sure enough, it all started to collapse the next morning. Karen launched one last offensive, rallying a few neighbors, telling anyone who'd listen that I'd ruined her son's chance at his driving test. The exaggerations were laughable, but still, rumors can be dangerous in small communities. I didn't retaliate. I didn't need to. Instead, I documented everything. Screenshots, timestamps, even her veiled online remarks. The storm was brewing again. But this time I was ready, and when it hit hard. A firm knock on my door broke the morning calm. But it wasn't just the local police this time. They were accompanied by an assistant from the state attorney's office. I greeted them like it was any other day. Coffee in hand, calm and collected. Karen, of course, didn't know what was happening. Her calls and complaints had triggered official scrutiny, not against me, but against her. The officers and the assistant weren't there to mediate. They were there to observe, to document what had become a clear pattern of harassment. Minutes later, Karen showed up, her usual arrogance replaced with visible nerves. She tried to start strong, her voice rising, words tumbling over themselves, but this time, her audience wasn't sympathetic. The assistant quietly laid out the facts. Every message, every false claim, every attempt to intimidate, it was all there, printed, dated, and organized. Karen's confidence began to melt away. Her protests grew weaker with every passing second. She tried to interrupt, to justify, to backpedal, but it was futile. The law doesn't bend to ego. I barely had to say a word. My silence spoke louder than any argument could, and then it happened. That exact moment when realization dawned on her face. The truth hit like a freight train. She hadn't trapped me. She'd trapped herself. By the end of the visit, the assistant issued a clear, final warning. Any further harassment, any continued attempts to manipulate or threaten, would result in formal charges. Karen stood there frozen. For once, she had no comeback, no tantrum, no deflection. Just the heavy silence of consequences catching up. When she finally turned and walked away, it wasn't with anger, it was with defeat. Real, unmistakable defeat. As I closed the door behind her, I felt the tension lift from my shoulders. What started as a simple request for a favor had turned into a masterclass in patience, composure, and the quiet power of knowing your rights. It taught me something invaluable, that standing firm doesn't mean shouting louder. It means standing smarter. It means letting truth and calmness win where chaos fails. Karen wanted my car. Instead, she got a reality check, one she won't forget anytime soon. Wow, what a ride, right? If you enjoyed watching this story unfold, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life encounters just like this. And hey, I want to hear your story. Have you ever dealt with a Karen or someone who tried to push your boundaries? Drop your experience in the comments below. I read every single one.